let's try this again. This was a test of patience, a test of wills, and that is a-okay with me. If you were here before, thank you so much for sticking around. If you're here for the second showing, thank you as well for your dedication. So yeah, I'm going to just start over from here. Honestly, I've got my comments up, so I will be able to reply to you live. And we'll just start over for people who didn't get a chance to see it before. And yeah, so let's start with the basics, right? So we are going to talk about Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, this is somebody who elicits strong feelings in people, and we're going to talk about why. We're also going to talk about why he is probably one of the greatest projectors that I've ever seen, and why people can have somewhat of a, frustrated reaction to him, especially projectors who perceive him to be working in a different way than he is. But first and foremost, what I want to get out in front of is to just note that if you look up Gary V's birth details on Google, you will see that he is born in this town that I cannot pronounce, and I won't attempt to. So he was born here, but because it doesn't show up, it's a small town, I guess. So, or smaller, according to, the charts, right? So human design, when you go to pull a chart, if it doesn't come up, if the town doesn't come up, say you were born in a really small town, you're going to want to look for some of the more, larger, more populous surrounding areas, and you'll choose whichever one comes up there. So I checked for both this town and Minsk, and the chart pulled up the same. So we're going to go with Minsk. It's the largest, closest town to his birth town. So with that said, one of the things that I really want to address is the perception that Gary Vee is a hustler, right? That he's part of that hustle mentality, and he's someone who works, right? And what I really want to point out, and Gary Vee himself has pointed this out. He pointed this out in an Instagram TV video last week, and I about fell out of my chair because without talking about human design types, he was talking about human design types. And he was essentially saying that the way he does his work would not be possible without the team that supports him. And he pointed to his videographer, and he pointed to his organizational guy that's with him, right? And Jessica says that I blew my mind when I told you he's a projector, but really, if you study Gary Vee, if you watch Gary Vee, he is such a projector. If you really look, right, the strategy for a projector is to wait for the invitation. And this can be something that really frustrates projectors, especially people in my field, and just fellow entrepreneurs in general, who feel like, oh, now I've got to wait for an invitation to share myself with the world. Well, no one's invited me yet, so how am I supposed to start sharing? And if you look at the way that Gary, his progression, he didn't start out being well respected. He didn't start out having everyone want to know his thoughts and opinions on things. And in fact, he makes a lot of jokes about how at the beginning of his career, he talked a big game. He talked about, the empire that he was going to one day design for himself. And I'm not going to say build, because he's not a builder. He is an architect. Okay, he's the designer of this building, but he has a whole team of people doing the building for him. Gary Vee is brilliant at what he does, but how often do you even see him holding the camera? How often do you see him really doing the work that it takes to show up on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and all of the places? So if you're someone who's frustrated and feeling inundated and, I can't show up in all the places, he wouldn't have been able to do this. He acknowledges this without the team behind him. So if you're not 10, 15 years into your career and you don't have the resources and allocations to be able to hire people to support you to that level, don't pressure yourself to show up everywhere. Feel into it. Where do you feel most invited? Where do you feel most welcome? Where do you feel is the place where you're going to receive the most invitations? And Gary Vee is so smart about the way that he goes about creating, opportunities for invitations. If you look at his social media, if you look at a lot of his videos now, I think on his TikTok, I'm not really a TikToker, but if you go on there, right, his phone number is all over the place. It's in his Twitter bio, right? It's all over the place. And he's giving people as many opportunities as possible to invite him to share his expertise, right? So I want you to really, if you're a projector, if you're someone who supports a projector, to open your perspective of what it means to get an invitation, because it's not always going to be, hey, Gary, what do you think about this? It didn't start out that way. He had to make himself more and more available for the invitations to come. And no, please, I'm not telling you to just go put your phone number everywhere on the internet. That's not what I'm saying. But, right, to be visible, to be consistent, consistency is king, and to allow people to know, hey, you're the person to invite for this particular thing, right? To make your particular expertise known. Kelsey asks, do you need these people's times of birth? Yes, I do. Now I will put an asterisk on that, because coming from the field of astrology, of course, I do know how to rectify birth times. If you know enough information about a person, it's hard to do this, with children, obviously. But if you've got someone who's old enough, who's had enough major life events happen in their life, you can rectify their birth time. Gary V's is actually available a lot of times, guys. If you want to find someone's birth chart, or translate it to their human design, you can just Google their name natal chart, or their name birth chart, right? And usually astro.com or astro charts, or one of those places that has a database of celebrity or just famous people's birth times, you can find them out there like that. And Gary Vee just happens to be one of those people. I personally, I'm a manifesting generator, Laura. So Gary Vee, being a projector, you see that he is not really like the person who's out there, editing the videos and taking the content and building it himself. Gary Vee is the architect, and a genius at that. That's the thing about projectors. And I love, there's one video in particular that just really emphasizes not just being a projector, but specifically being a 3/5 and being someone who has the energy to test and experiment with things and test things and then share it with the world, right? And that's very 3/5. And so anyway, but he has this video where it's like from 7 years ago, 10 years ago or whatever. And he's talking about Instagram. And what they did is they took that video and they just bleeped out every time that he said Instagram, and they put a little like graphic over his mouth that says TikTok, right? Because he's basically just trying to share with you the principles, the ideology behind what he was really sharing with people back then about Instagram. You can apply it to TikTok now, right? And what that really reminds me of is, as a projector, it's not about the present moment. It's not about like what we need right now. It's about this very large, big picture vision. I use this analogy of all the types building a town, and I call the projector the architect, because if they were to try to create a plan or to, create a blueprint for a town, a projector is not going to just take into consideration who we have right now and who's here. They're going to take into consideration population growth and like all of the environmental factors, and not just where we're going to be in 5 years or 10 years even, but 20 years, 100 years. They're going to create plans that fit the greatest possible outcome, right? And that is just kind of the genius of projectors. But for projectors to go big and to do things in the sense that Gary Vee has, you're really going to need that support team of, generators, ideally, people who have that specific sacral energy to actually get things created, that physical creation force. If Gary Vee was trying to do all of this himself and he was going to, solopreneur, backpack it, he would not have ascended to the level that he has, and not even, close. I know a great many generators and manifesting generators who do scale to 6 and even 7 figures before they break down and hire a team. And it's not necessarily because they're not already on the cusp of burnout, but it's more that they, want to control things. But, for projectors, getting to the same level as, a generator or manifesting generator without the support is going to be a challenge. It's going to feel hard. It's going to feel like an uphill battle. And you may find yourself comparing yourself to the 70% of the population who have that generator motor. And you're like, why don't I have that energy? Why am I needing a nap? Why am I so burnt out? Why am I so tired? People who, I see it all the time, people who have this open sacral center are the people who are going to go, try all of the different like mushroom teas and get B12 shots and, all kinds of things to try to biohack and optimize themselves, right? When truly what they need is to ask people for help. They really need personal and professional support. Now, something else that I found funny about Gary Vee, because this is something that, again, that feeling of hustle, right? Just because he talks quickly and has that urgency doesn't necessarily mean he's hustling, but he does have a certain sense of urgency about him. And I was not shocked to find a completely wide open root center, not one single gate in the root center defined. And when you see a wide open root center on someone, they have that energy of like a chicken with their head cut off, right? Or like running around like the house is on fire. Like, what's going on? Slow down. You need to relax, right? And so someone who is, has that open root center, you can, you witness that in them. And even if he's not personally, doing all of the work and creating, if you go on Gary Vee's TikTok, God bless him, but he's not the person who's sitting there creating all of the graphics and doing all of that video editing, right? So please, recognize that you can get to that place, but if you don't have the physical creative energy, if it's just not something that you want to do, don't pressure yourself to show up like that, okay? Give yourself the time, space, and resources to be able to create, at the level that you are. And then when you get to your ceiling, okay, well, what's next? What do I need to, what do I need to apply at cause? What resources, what thoughts, what, actions do I need to apply at cause in order to create the new effects that I want? And you'll get some good answers there. Now, Gary Vee, super not shocked to see that defined will, right? Defined will is that like motivation, that get up and go, that he doesn't need anybody outside of himself to motivate himself. That's self-motivated, right? And it's about 40% of the population that has that defined will. And it can be a little triggering for the 60% of people who don't. If you have an open will and you find yourself, getting into comparison a lot, and do I need another thing? Do I need another certification? Do I need, another class, another course, another testimonial before I can put myself out there or charge what I'm worth or whatever it is that your ceiling is for you right now? Gary Vee is someone who may challenge you and may make you feel as if like, oh, am I not enough? Do I need to do or be more? And it's not the case, right? He is just self-motivated and he is who he is. And he makes himself available for you to kind of siphon off that energy if you would like to use it, but it's not something to be triggered by, right? Now, I was also not super shocked to see that defined ajna because again, on top of being a projector, Gary Vee just seems to have this vision and this sense about him that he can see into the future. And how can he do that? And the Ajna Center is really responsible for answers and solutions and organization. And so, suffice to say, he's very much designed for creating solutions and for motivating people. And particularly, I love how defined that spleen is, particularly for giving people that energy to take the leap, right? Because the Splenic Center is responsible for survival and for fight or flight and for intuition. And for people who have that center open, you may feel as if big decisions in life, like, should I, change my business? Should I sell a new course? Should I get into this relationship? Should I begin a new partnership? All of the big decisions in life can sometimes feel almost like life or death, right? And a lot of people who have this splenic center open can sometimes struggle with anxiety. And so people who have it defined, you can either choose to be triggered by the fact that they're bold, right? And that's really all it is just boldness. It's being able to weigh, well, do I want what's on the other side of this risk more than I am afraid of the risk, right? Or can I push through it? So you can either choose to be triggered or, again, choose to siphon off that bold energy and allow it to, seep into you and embolden you so that you can choose, yeah, it's not life or death for me to make this decision. What if this is the life or death of my heart, of my soul, of my passion, right? And that's really what Gary Vee is trying to instill in people. Again, super not shocked to see that he's a 3-5. That 3 in the profile is designed for experimentation. It's designed to bump into things and to try things out and to experiment with things and to get better at things and then to teach it to others, right? And then particularly that 5 explains a lot about people's reactions to him, right? So not just what centers does he have defined that make him particularly, potentially triggering, but also having a line 5 in the profile and, because it's the second line in his profile, it's a physical thing too. It's not anything about his personality. It's just a physical experience that when people come into his presence, they will either see the potential of who they could be and they love it in him and it's like moths to a flame, or they can be triggered by it and see someone who's out there doing, something that they secretly, have a repressed desire to want to do or be or have. And it's troubling and frustrating because a long time ago, they shut that possibility out for them, right? And so people who have a 5 in your profile, it's an experience that you have that people either kind of love you or hate you, and people have a very visceral reaction to you. And so I wasn't shocked to see that Gary Vee had a 3-5 profile either. Gary Vee is one of the most hit, right? Like I look at so many different charts and he's so him. I laughed out loud when I saw his chart. So I want to know, if you're here watching, do you have a 3-5 profile? Do you have a 5 in your profile? Any of these things that I've pulled out, I'm curious to know about your experience with these, right? Do you have a defined will? Do you have a defined spleen? And how does that, match up with some of Gary Vee's experiences and what I'm sharing with you here? I have some links in the description if you want to go deeper into your design. I have a couple of options for you to go deeper. And so, yeah, I'm super jazzed to be able to share Gary Vee's chart in particular, because he's someone that I just marvel at. And I send all of my projector clients and, my human design curious people who tell me I'm a projector, but I don't know what this means. Go watch Gary Vee. Just go study him as a person. He's one of the most projectors I've ever seen in my life. So it's a pleasure to be able to share that with you. And I will be back soon for another celebrity read. So until then, I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Bye.